Hello and welcome to Daughters of Ferrix, the show about Star Wars, politics, and whatever Philosophy 101 bullshit I can shoehorn in this week. I'm your host, Eleanor Mueller, and with me is my co-host, Sophia Dunstan.
I'm here. Wow.
You're here.
I'm here. I live here.
You live on the podcast.
I do. I live on the podcast.
Sophie, for the first time ever, our beautiful listeners can see your lovely face. How's it make you feel?
I don't, I'm not like nervous or anything, but I do feel sympathetic because they're stuck with my ugly mug on their televisions and their iPhones and
their smart fridges. Yeah, I guess the condolence is that I'm probably going to be on screen a lot more than you because I talk more on the show.
Look, as the hotter half of the Daughters of Ferrix podcast.
I don't know about that. Context, if you're listening over on YouTube or on Spotify, if I get that figured out, you can watch this show now, including, again, our faces, but also with added visuals, as often as is reasonable for the amount of time that it takes me. If you hate our faces, you can keep listening to the audio version, which will hopefully remain uncompromised. Everyone wins.
Mm-hmm.
Daughters of Ferrix, like all good things in our horrifically commodified world, is a multimedia property.
We have multiple medias. We have video,
we're
audio.
not really a property. We're not even an LLC at this point. We're just kind of one singular me in the corner of my apartment, scamming loyal patrons for their precious money. Speaking of whom, thank you to Marva and Orr for their patronage. Marva is the salvaged pod racer engine that keeps this slaughtered Ronto of a show cooking.
What does that mean?
There's a restaurant in the. We're talking about the theme
Aren't you
park
a
today.
vegan?
Yeah, I'm not a vegetarian, but yeah.
And you're making favorable references to eating meat. Shame on you.
I used the word slaughter.
That's favorable in my view.
I did it with intention. Listen, do I question any portrayals of me eating? Yes, I do. I thought it would be funny. Rontos aren't real.
You're not real.
Fuck it. I don't care. There aren't human vegetarians in Star Wars. There might be, but there aren't any I can think of. If you're interested in early access to the show, episode outtakes, hypothetically, the Daughters of Ferrix Discord server, and monthly bonus episodes, like this month's where we discuss a whack-ass evangelical Christian Star Wars book from 1977, check us out at patreon.com/Daughters of Ferrix.
It's good.
The book or the episode?
The episode. The book is not good.
The book is
the book is interesting.
The book is the book. Go check it out. Hopefully it'll be out soon. Oh, also credit right up top. This episode was co-written by Meg Brennan, a fellow Portland resident and beloved member of our Discord. She does some very well-considered writing about media and entertainment over on her blog, parksandcontradiction.medium.com, which I've also linked in the episode description. I highly recommend it. Meg is smart. We're very grateful to have her helping out this time. Sophie.
Eleanor.
What would you do with $4 billion?
Well, I'd probably give most of it away to charity so it didn't like drag my soul down to hell, but
that does seem to be the thing to do.
I don't know.
I feel like I don't know, put some of it toward like strike funds, get rid of most of it. I don't believe in hell, but I believe in hell for billionaires.
I would probably buy like probably a stupid expensive penthouse in the city of my choice.
Anyway, none of these fantastic ideas are what Bob Iger would do. Because in October of 2012, it was announced that the Walt Disney Company, in their endless crusade to monopolize mass media as we know it, would spend $4 billion to acquire Lucasfilm Limited. And with it, of course, all of Star Wars. Now, Sophie, can you imagine why Disney might want to own all of Star Wars?
Well, as you said, they want to monopolize media, and Star Wars is, if you believe it, a media franchise. A franchise, in fact, known for producing fairly popular media.
Fairly popular media that gets them a lot of money. They want to make that dough. They want to get those fat Skywalker stacks.
That chili cheese.
Yeah, exactly. And where do they start? Well, first, they gotta guarantee that they can make sequel films to the original trilogy with the OG characters. The prequels were still, generally conceived of at that time as uniquely terrible blights on the fabric of humankind or whatever. So if you want to mine that nostalgia vein, you gotta have Luke and Leia and Han Disney greenlights a new trilogy of films, they announce the casting of characters new and old and begin to pave the way for The Force Awakens.
The worst Star Wars movie ever made.
It's got competition. Even if you're a Force Awakens hater, come on, it's surely it has competition. It's fucking Star Wars. Star Wars is and will always be uneven. Anyway, I like Force Awakens. Force Awakens, as we all know, fucking killed at the box office. It is still the highest grossing film in North America, $930 million. People really wanted to see the Millennium Falcon do that crazy flip thing from the trailer. But while that $930 million and the cash raked in by ventures like Rogue One in following years was absolutely part of why Lucasfilm was acquired, it wasn't all of it. See, Disney isn't just a media company, it is an all-around entertainment company. So yeah, that includes books, television, news, but it also means experiences. Theme parks.
Like Disneyland. Oh my goodness.
Quoting from a CNBC article from earlier this year, in 2023, experiences was the best performing part of Disney's business, accounting for 36% of the company's total revenue, but 70% of its operating income. Meanwhile, Disney's entertainment division, which includes its theatrical and streaming businesses, represented 45% of revenue, but just 11% of operating income.
So they make more money off of like Disney World than like Disney Plus or whatever.
It sure seems like it. I don't know. In general, I think it's becoming more and more widely understood that big ass companies often operate with profit models that are different than we onlookers might assume.
Well, right, because airlines make all their money off of credit cards.
Exactly. Like a lot of high profile startups and websites are kind of run with the hope that they might someday make money, which seems counterintuitive. Twitter.
I think you mean X. Okay.
Sorry, twitter.com/garbagefile/X, the everything app, has almost never been profitable, despite it being almost 18 years old at this point. The business decisions made around Disney Plus make a lot of sense once you recognize that they have only succeeded for the first time to make streaming profitable genuinely a few months ago. Like, this is a recent development.
Innovation that excites.
They've entirely spent the last 5 years just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's bad to have an entire tentpole industry held up with the wishes and magical thinking of tech bros.
With venture capital.
Yeah, that's not what this episode is about. Go listen to an episode of Trash Future or whatever. What we are here to talk about is the fact that no matter how you slice it, a massive point of buying Star Wars was that so Disney Co. can put stormtroopers in Disneyland and Disney World. And all the other global ones that...
And Disney Paris, Disney Tokyo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know all that shit because, and I cannot emphasize this enough, I am not a theme parks person. Meg is, that's why I wrote this episode with her. But like, I don't know, as much as I'm willing to shill for Star Wars, I have a hard time applying those same rose-tinted glasses to the happiest place on earth.
I am also not a theme park person.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Star Wars. It's all bullshit. Again, we'll get to it. It's an arbitrary line, but I guess that's where it is for me. Maybe it's just aesthetic. I don't know. Immersion has been the favorite buzzword of theme park executives for some time now. And it's easy to see why. Sometime around 2004, Disney was in talks with Queen of the Transphobe Hive Mind, J.K. Rowling, in order to get the theme park rights to Harry freaking Potter. But Disney fumbled that back. And they fumbled super hard.
Because Universal got it.
Universal got it. And in 2010, they opened the first of many...
Hogwartslandia.
Yeah, Wizardland. The Harry Potter land featured food and drink inspired by the books, locations and set dressing that were basically pulled right from the series of films. And since the series so heavily romanticizes the purchasing of goods, it was perfect for an abundance of themed gift shops. All of this basically single-handedly catapulted Universal Studios from obvious inferior to Disney parks to like the hottest thing since, I have here in my script, Soarin', California. I'm told that's a ride. I was trying to make a theme park reference. Sorry, I won't do it again. Which has gotta hurt. I don't know, if you're the Walt Disney Company, for the first time, someone else poses real competition. Theme parks are supposed to be your thing. That's your brand. That's your whole identity.
You have to sympathize with Disney. You really do. I mean, you have to feel bad for their like.
You really have to hand it to Disney.
Help them wipe their tears with like $1,000 bills in their like Scrooge McDuck cave full of money.
Directly underneath the Cinderella castle. So Disney's feeling sore. They gotta bring their A game, I guess. You know, if you're Disney, get the theme park rights to something comparably popular to Harry Potter and give that park the sort of immersive, you're actually in the movie quality that will properly compete with Harry Potter land.
And then ruin Space Mountain.
I think Hyperspace Mountain is cool, but whatever.
It was fine before, and then they made it worse. It was fine before, they made it worse. They made it worse, folks.
Okay,
Many
that.
people are saying.
Stop it with the Trump impression. It's not 2016.
You're right, it's 2024, and we have at least, if Trump loses this election, we have at least 4 more years of him running for office.
4 more years of him. He said he's not going to run for the next presidential.
He's lying.
I don't think
He's full of shit. He's lying.
I believe him because he's fucking ancient. He's going to be dead by the next presidential.
He is not giving up the Republican Party until he is dead.
He's going to talk at shit and whatever and say whatever racist bullshit if he loses, but he's going to die.
Evil people always live forever.
He might die tomorrow. Saying he might die tomorrow is not a threat.
This is not.
If there's another attempt on his life tomorrow, that's not my fault.
It has nothing to do with us.
That has nothing to do with me. It is kind of funny how often that's been happening, though.
And they're all Republicans, too, which is weird.
Well, you know, infighting is not solely the domain of my people. So they gotta get the theme park rights and then make this like immersive park. And so they bought the theme park rights to Avatar. The James Cameron one, not the one I actually like. You know, bummer.
Naughty.
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 Anyway, apparently the Avatar theme park is great. I haven't been, but it seems cool, I guess. No, as we already established, they bought Star Wars. George Lucas's former baby would be their opportunity to make a modern, sexy, immersive theme park. And even better, to stick it to that hag JK, which is, you know, an honorable goal. Frankly, one I share in my personal life.
Disney has decided to support trans rights to, quote, stick it to that hag JK.
If they said that, I would...
Ellie would convert to capitalism.
I would get capitalist baptized and everything. 2 Star Wars lands were proposed, built concurrently at both Disney World in Florida and Disneyland in California, announced in 2015 by CEO Robert Felonius Iger as the company's largest single theme park expansion ever. The other gimmick was realism. You know, realism. Everything there had to be something that you could see in a Star Wars film. If you wouldn't see it in Star Wars, it didn't belong. The idea was to turn guests into inhabitants of a living place, interacting with cast members, stormtroopers, and rebel fighters as if they were in the Star Wars themselves. Cast members working in stores and around rides would be proper denizens of the location. They would be given a variety of wardrobe pieces in order to customize a more naturalized look. And none of those workers acknowledged that Star Wars is a media series. If you try to talk to them about the original trilogy, they'll be all, oh, you've heard of the legends too? It's very silly. The food, like the Harry Potter park before it, was in universe, but it's Star Wars, so it's like kind of alien and colorful and weird.
Blue milk.
As described by Scott Trowbridge, director of the project, detailed in the book, The Imagineering Story, the team wanted guests to be able to enjoy a glass of blue milk you buy off the farmer at the blue milk stand. All that kind of detail comes together to reinforce your Star Wars story.
I want to buy blue milk off the blue milk farmer at the blue milk stand. Wow, look at me. I'm so creative.
I will say this. The ways in which Star Wars has leaned into the blue milk thing, I think are absolutely ridiculous. Blue milk is not a factor in episode 4. It's barely there. People know about it, but like, why? Why market anyway? The promise of this park is clear. Go to Disney and you can become Glup Shitto.
You almost made me spit out water. I hope you're happy. I don't just want to think about Glup Shitto. I want to be Glup Shitto.
Now I am become Glup Shitto, whaler of jizz. It really makes you feel like Batman.
I am become Glup Shitto, whaler of jizz, drinker of blue milk, shooter
Yeah.
of blaster.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, not shooter of blaster. Crowds, guns. Not really.
It's America. Everybody has guns.
Not at Disney. They fucking check you. There's a metal detector.
You know you can buy guns made out of carbon fiber now?
Of course, you can take a fucking Shinzo Abe doohickey into Disney parks if you manage it. That's not what I'm not saying you can't mass murder people at Disney. God fucking damn it. Why do we always do shit like this? All of that aside, Star Wars Land is a park, so it needs to embody a place. At Universal's Harry Potter thing, there are areas for both the town near the Wizard School itself and also Diagon Alley. You can cheerfully celebrate wizard capitalism just like in the books. Whoa.
I hope you know I'm rolling my eyes really hard right now.
It would be easy to do something similar for Star Wars, right? There are a lot of fantastic choices. Iconic locations straight from the films. Maybe you do a whole land set on Tatooine since it's so recognizable and important to the story. You could visit the cantina and avoid sand trooper patrols. Oh, or hell, you want to do something more contemporary, tie it into the new films? How about Takodana? Spend time with pirates, order food in Maz's castle. They didn't do that.
What if we did something else?
Yeah. Because the first thing that's kind of weird about the Star Wars theme park is that it's not based on the films whatsoever. Not really. Star Wars Land, branded Galaxy's Edge, is set on the planet Batuu in a settlement called Black Spire Outpost.
Glupshido Outpost.
Glupshido Outpost. The idea is that Black Spire Outpost is a well-trodden ancient spaceport frequented by smugglers and adventurers on the Outer Rim. It has a rich history and culture, landmarks in the form of petrified natural spires around the settlement, and is just important enough that it serves as a place of interest for important galactic factions. Disney figured that people would be disappointed not to see things from the films they just watched in the parks, so Galaxy's Edge is set a little bit after The Last Jedi and features both a key resistance base and a First Order presence, so Kylo Ren can stomp around the square angrily looking for Rey.
Have you found the Resistance spy, Lieutenant?
Not yet, sir, but we will. I have dispatched reconnaissance patrols.
Batuu was also, once upon a time, home to a Jedi temple, so there's like a Force-y element too. We got it all. But again, this isn't a location depicted in any film or cartoon at this point. It would get little references in Solo and Resistance, and a bunch of tie-in publishing material that I have read and is admittedly pretty good. But yeah, they made the thing up entirely for the park. A guiding theme behind Galaxy's Edge is self-empowerment, what it means to be a hero. And they decided that recreating an environment from the films wasn't conducive to that theme. Quoting Trowbridge again, "We wanted a place where we could discover our own story."
You said I can't be mean earlier, but that sounds hacky.
It is very, it's a cheeseball thing to say. We'll come back to it. The question at the heart of this episode is, why is Galaxy's Edge like that? Why are these two Star Wars theme parks that each took $1 billion fucking to build and by all rights ought to be the biggest, most manufactured cornball nostalgia fest, at least interested in being something? And is it at all possible for it to succeed? Here, I'm not sure I've adequately described Galaxy's Edge. I will give you another example to get at what I mean, because the park is a little bit weird. I need you to understand this, both as a listener and as you, Sophie, sitting there. I need you to get the Galaxy's Edge is a little bit fucked up. It's a little bit bullshit.
Fire away. I am ready.
To deliberately misquote Stafford Beer, the purpose of a store is what it sells. So, in order to describe what kind of thing Galaxy's Edge is, let's compare merchandise from Galaxy's Edge to that from its sort of predecessor, Star Wars presence in the quasi-sci-fi Tomorrowland area of the park in Anaheim. See, I'm not going to properly describe Star Wars' surprisingly long history with Disney parks, but there's basically been a Star Wars ride at Disneyland since 1987. That's Star Tours, which is this simulator thing that tosses you around in a ship while you watch some point of view footage on screen. And naturally, a Star Wars themed gift shop exists alongside it. What else would they do? So that gift shop is named the Star Trader, and it serves as a pretty good benchmark for something contemporary that isn't trying to do whatever Galaxy's Edge is. So a few items sold at the Star Trader between 2022 and 2024. An R2-D2 themed cap with Mickey Mouse ears on it, Star Wars branded phone cases, a black beanie with a big yellow pom-pom and giant matching Star Wars logo on the brim, socks with Baby Yoda on them, signed character portraits of Lando Calrissian and Yoda, among a lot of other characters, mini lounge fly backpacks with chibi art of original trilogy characters, a set of drinking glasses with cartoon art of Luke dueling Vader, Funko Pops. Like a lot of Funko Pops.
Yeah, no, I have been through this, and I have one of the R2-D2 like Mickey Mouse ear things.
Goddamn, you could have worn it for this episode. We're on screen now, Sophie. You gotta dress accordingly.
I don't have it with me. It's at my parents' house.
Goddamn. At Galaxy's Edge, coasters and t-shirts and pins and the like tend to be much less aggressively branded as Star Wars. They might have the logo, but just as often they're themed after Black Spire Outpost, or they signify allegiance to a group like the Resistance or the Droid Builder Shop. Collectible cups or bottles are covered in Arabesh or a similar looking Roman font. There's an iPhone case you can buy, but it comes with little greebly machine pieces to make your phone look like it's a data pad. There are some action figures at Galaxy's Edge tucked away in collectible black boxes, but the items at the Toydarian Toy Shop include little AT-ATs and TIE fighters meant to look handmade from metal or wood, posable wooden mannequins painted to resemble Boba Fett or Poe Dameron, or floppy ragdolls that look like Watto or Ahsoka. Again, designed to look handmade. The in-universe context of Galaxy's Edge seems to lead to a sort of blending of the source material. Toys from Star Trader are clearly from Empire, explicitly branded for The Rise of Skywalker. During the release of Book of Boba Fett, there was a display at the front of the store with just a whole pile of Boba and Fennec merch, blocky green series logo plastered on all of it. They did a similar display for the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace earlier this year. But Galaxy's Edge lacks that specificity, I guess. It's all supposed to be real, so why would they discriminate according to film? Or conversely, it's all Star Wars, so of course you'll be interested. Collectibles aren't like the signed headshots on display at the Star Trader. Instead, you can go to Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities and pick up a replica of the star compass that Luke gets in Battlefront 2, or a white shoulder pauldron like what Obi-Wan wears as a general, or a wall hanging meant to look like a stone-carved relief of Maul, Sidious, and Vader, or this fucking ice cream maker. Like the one carried by Wilro Hood, the one that's the container, there's fucking Wilro Hood collectibles. Well, at least, one, at the park. It's not still sold there, but when Galaxy's Edge opened, you could get a blue plastic tackle box that was filled with the fucking dinner rations that Luke has on Dagobah.
Hey, it's my dinner.
Pretzel sticks and Tic Tacs. They're little bits of cereal. Why? Why is that a thing?
Oh, that would be cool though.
Like, yeah, okay, I want that. I will, yes. But does it appeal to, I don't know, fucking Carolyn, the white neurotypical lady from Nevada that's visiting Disneyland with her 3 kids? Does any of this shit have mass appeal? I have been to Disneyland twice. First on a high school trip when I was 17, and then again 5 years later to visit Galaxy's Edge after it opened. Disneyland as a 17-year-old really sucked for me. I was uncomfortable. I didn't know what I'd enjoy, so I didn't know what to do. I felt weird and alienated from my then girlfriend who was also on the trip with me. But I liked the Star Wars stuff, including the Star Trader gift shop, and one thing very clearly. The Build Your Own Lightsaber stand, a display with trays of plastic lightsaber parts with which you could construct a custom, flick-out plastic lightsaber. It's informal, pieces like emitters or end caps end up everywhere on the floor. There are screens at the top of the stand playing movie footage from The Force Awakens or whatever. It's fun for kids, sure, but it's not much of an experience whatsoever. I remember it, but it wasn't meaningful. The second time I went to Disneyland, it was on my own terms. I was going as a Star Wars fan to check out Galaxy's Edge, and I was dead set on doing everything I reasonably could since I didn't expect to be back anytime soon. Again, not a theme park person. I made up an itinerary, I booked everything beforehand, and I had an okay time. There were lots of things that I liked, and some things that I didn't like so much. I was there with my now ex-wife, and while it wasn't miserable, let's just say that colored my experience in certain ways.
You mean that being at a place with the person you're not married to anymore would change an experience? I am shocked.
No, we were married then.
No, I know, but like you're not now.
I don't know. Some people divorce amicably. I divorced almost amicably. Almost. One thing I did like, though, was the Galaxy's Edge lightsaber building experience. It is a lot more formal. You book it beforehand, and it costs enough.
Ellie's embarrassed at how much she...
I'm not embarrassed. I'm just mad. I paid for my ex to do it since I actually just wanted a movie replica lightsaber, not a custom one, and I went as her +1. So they bring you and any others in your time slot into a dark room. You and those others take a place standing around a worn-looking metal table in the shape of an oval, the middle of which is open to allow for attendance and the person leading the show to stand at the center of attention. And you are brought a tray of parts in accordance with an aesthetic theme selected beforehand. My ex-wife chose protection and defense, which included elements with royal gold and brass detailing. The cast member leading the experience introduces colors of kyber crystal alongside pensive music and corresponding dramatic lights along the ceiling. My ex chose blue. Correct choice.
Green is better, sorry.
It's not, but you know. The attendants then walk the group through lightsaber construction. It's not complicated. You place your crystal into the chamber and slot pieces onto the cylindrical chassis, but your lightsaber is reasonably unique and the parts are durable. It's got a real heft to it. Once everyone's done constructing their hilt, you're guided through placing it onto the concealed blade where it sits in a chamber on the table. The lights dim, and just before everyone ignites their sabers together, Yoda's theme plays and his magical voice speaks from beyond the grave and tells you you did a good job at the lightsaber or whatever.
Well done. Chosen a part with skill you have. Chosen with heart. When joined they are much more they will become. For you, it is time.
And then everyone turns their lightsabers on, the blades are revealed, and you hold them up in front of you. And then you're given a cool carrying bag and sent on your way. It's hokey. It's very theatrical and theme parky. It's definitely not for everyone, but I don't know. I don't know. Damn it, I kind of got choked up listening to the John Williams music and being in a dark room with a bunch of glowing lightsabers. It was dumb, but Yoda spoke to me. Well, he spoke to my ex-wife, but close enough. That wrinkly bitch always kind of gets to me, you know?
Oh, it sounds fun. It sounds wholesome.
It was fun. And it was, I guess, meaningful, kind of, sort of. I don't know. A hell of a lot more meaningful than the plastic build-your-own lightsaber stand. There's this tension at the heart of the artistic medium theme park. And yeah, it's a medium for art, whether we like it or not. The tension between looking to the past, playing to lazy nostalgia and making a quick buck for the corporate overlords, or looking to the future, in a way. Looking to do something outside of the audience's personal experiences, maybe still playing on nostalgia, but also bringing people somewhere they could never go otherwise. And that goal, you know, artistic transportation, does seem to be key for a lot of the creatives who worked on Galaxy's Edge. In 2020, Joe Rohde, lead designer of Disney World Animal Kingdom, the Avatar Park, and earring enthusiast, announced his retirement after 40 years on the job. I say earring enthusiast because Rohde has one ear that is, his earlobe is pierced, and on it is hanging just like 20 plus earrings, just weighing down the lobe. It is quite the look, I will say.
It sounds very SoCal.
He's very SoCal. It is. You would see him on the street and go, yeah.
Oh yeah, you live in Los Angeles, yeah.
Yeah, I know where you're from. Anyway, Rohde didn't work on Galaxy's Edge, but he still got quite the resume. After 4 decades, he is a damn pro. His philosophy behind the work he did at Disney was detailed and well-educated, and as you might imagine, he wanted to pass that expertise on to the public. Some people in his position might create a blog or a Substack, you know, a great no-frills way to write. Or, you know, he could have pulled a Masahiro Sakurai and began an instructional YouTube channel.
その名の通り、ゲーム開発におけるほとんどのことは、ディレクターが方向を見定めて判断すべきです。
Joe Rohde wrote his treatise on theme park design on Instagram.
You're kidding.
No, this is real. Numbered walls of text paired with whatever pictures he deemed relevant, posted to Instagram.com/Joe Rohde. But despite the format, the content of that text, well, I don't know, Rhodey takes his discipline very seriously.
It's one thing to pursue an art form based on decisions that a bunch of guys made in the 1950s. It is quite another to follow a traceable line of thought that dates back to the foundations of Western civilization.
Oh boy. Look, I'm sure he really is a pro and that he definitely knows what he's doing. But that is, I have to say, a very undergraduate way to start a paper of any sort, even an Instagram paper. You know, you're talking
We all
about...
love to think that our discipline leads back at least to the founding of Western civilization, right?
No,
Podcasting.
This is funny because I did the same thing the other day. I wrote I made a callback to Shakespeare in a stupid paper I wrote. I was like, in the words of the Bard, and I wanted to sort of off myself afterwards. But
God, you are such a student.
I did get a good grade. So,
well, you know, that's all that matters, right?
Yes, it actually is. This paper is worthless in any other way.
I've never gotten a good grade in my life.
That's what we call a skill issue.
That's what we call consistency, consistent performance.
Yeah, I'm consistently bad.
Exactly. Anyway, I'm not going back to the foundations of Western civilization, but there are some key points that I think are worth bringing up to emphasize that artistic pedigree. Before the 1800s, European nobility would create and groom landscapes of artificial gardens. For instance, the gardens of Versailles, but also, and more relevant to our conversation, the English landscape tradition. The focus on grooming the landscape to look naturalistic, but literally picturesque.
Sorry, I'm feeling like the ghost of my art history teacher, like tapping me on the shoulder and being like, remember this?
As I have said, art history still counts as history. Fuck you. Fuck you, listeners. You want nerd shit? Art history time. You can't tell me what to do. This show's about theme parks now. No, it's about other stuff. We'll get there. So, in order to kind of uphold this landscape tradition, rivers are fully redirected. Soil is mounded to become artificial hills. Villages are relocated, all to make just some pretty scenery, and with it, an argument about the ideal form of nature, a story about the English relationship to the land. In many ways, a response to the formal, symmetrical style of the French. I hadn't realized a garden could be reactionary, but I guess here we are.
I mean, Tolkien, and that's all I'll say.
But the English didn't just stop at creating forests and rivers, because as Rhodey puts it,
once you've created an entirely artificial landscape that suggests a particular narrative idea, why not build buildings in that landscape that are equally artificial and made up to further accentuate those ideas?
English landscape design came to include what are called follies. False temples, castles, pagodas. A ruined, eroded look was often key. It gave the impression that this is how the landscape had always been, how England had always been. It helped to tell the story, right?
And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's pastures green, etc., mythicizing your own history.
Exactly. Again, like in an aesthetic way, this is in keeping with the ideal of the picturesque, as it rose to prominence with 18th century Romanticism.
A preference for highly textured, eroded structures, man-made objects succumbing to the forces of nature and becoming more natural, and therefore morally superior, by acquiring the character of natural things, aging, irregularity, roughness, asymmetry, atmosphere. Many of these coalesce into paintings of ruins, castles, cathedrals, cottages, old towns, eccentric forests. In short, the mainstay subjects one still finds in narrative placemaking.
Because narrative is the point, right? Narratives of personal genius or integrity, relationship to a distant mythic past, reverence for nature or strong national character, told via carefully manicured landscapes and deliberately weathered structures.
It's like almost like more perverse than the continental obsession with like having a perfectly manicured lawn maintained by like 10,000 slaves.
I would argue it is very similar and potentially the same. But
it looks better. Maybe this is the Anglo in me, but I do somewhat prefer the kind of like romantic vista of the Victorian age to the kind of the hideous perfectness of like Versailles. Like
Yes,
that's just like
absolutely. Like, I think it'd be cool to walk around Versailles, but oh my God, I feel like some of those English landscapes, you could just sit and stare at them forever. I totally get it.
it's a better aesthetic sensibility. Yeah.
Totally. If I had $4 billion or whatever.
Then you make like J.K. Rowling and buy like a Scottish manor.
Yes, exactly. Right across the street from J.K. Rowling, where I could chuck stuff out my window
to taunt her.
into her house.
Well, and you can sort of spray like anti-mold at her house and maybe it will make her more normal.
And just see her shrivel up like the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, she's come to sort of have a symbiotic relationship with the black mold coating her walls. If it dies, she dies.
She's more mold now than man. So, the age of various revolution meant the end to all those exclusive aristocratic gardens with their bullshit ruins. But by the mid-1800s, the growing middling class started to get their hands on a bit of free time. Scandalous, I know. And began to yearn for some backyard picturesque all of their own. So came public spaces.
Yeah, so you can take the Metropolitan Railway to Kensington Gardens or whatever, where you can sit next to a pond and be like, oh, isn't this great? Only 2 years ago, we were all dying of the Black Plague, innit?
Exactly. That's what they all did. But yeah, it's public spaces and gardens and amusement parks and eventually shit like the World Exhibition in Chicago where Walt Disney's own father worked as a vendor.
I think in a lot of senses, the kind of like World's Fairs and stuff were the sort of, I don't know, almost forerunners to theme parks, right? Like if you look at, you can't really see much of it in Chicago anymore, except in the one big park by the lake. But if you go there, or you go to the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, or you go to Forest Park in St. Louis, all these sort of remains of their, respective World's Fairs, these buildings are like theme parky, right? Like they're built in this like Romanesque style a lot of times, even though they were made with like plaster and wood frame. Like it's the same thing as the English Follies.
What was that World's Fair where you had the big Soviet structure and the big Nazi structure?
Oh, the facing each other. Oh, I love that. That was in Paris.
Yeah, I think they should make that into a theme park.
You can have like your Nazis versus it's laser tag.
I want Nazis versus Soviets laser tag.
For those who are unfamiliar, I think it was it the 36 World's Fair in Paris? All the different countries, got to build like a pavilion to show off like their innovations.
Oh yeah. Yes, it's 36.
It's 36. Oh, I remember.
Oh, wait, 37? 37.
So in 1937, they have the Paris World's Fair, and all the countries get to put on their little, pavilion, and they can put, here is our latest advance in, I don't know, what did they do in the 30s? Radios.
Cocaine.
Yeah, the use of cocaine for the curing of female hysteria, things like that.
Now there's an idea.
And the Nazis, the Germans, and the Soviets happen to, for some reason, be, placed sort of across from one another.
Me and J.K. Rowling in our Scottish mansions.
Exactly. Although I wouldn't call her a Nazi.
She's done way more Nazi apologia than I've done Soviet apologia. Let's just say that.
So the Nazis, of course, being the weirdos that they are, they build this Romanesque, Gothic, giant temple looking thing with a giant swastika clutching eagle on the front of it. And it looks like
it sucks. For the record, it sucks.
It's not good, but it is interesting. And the Soviets across from them, I think very intentionally, build this sort of staircase with this giant statue of the Soviet worker holding a hammer and these the forces of revolution crashing into the walls of reaction, and it's just an excellent piece.
It's a man and a woman at the top of this fucking tower.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
And the tower is ascending behind them, we're going to crash into this wall of reaction, and the great conflict sort of presupposed in art, and it's really excellent.
Not to be a simp, but it's kicks the Nazis thing's ass.
The juxtaposition between the two of them is just really fascinating. Can we put a link in the description to a picture of that, because it's really cool to look at?
I mean, it will be on screen in the video version of the show.
Oh yeah, we're We're modern.
Yeah, the people watching us have already seen it.
But anyway, yeah, no, that's really cool. It's sort of unrelated, but like these World's Fairs are in a lot of senses like the sort of manufactured environment we all expect from a theme park now.
And I will say, there is room to return. That would be cool. No, it would just have like ExxonMobil at the fucking 2027 World Fair. It would suck. It would just suck. I bet people thought it sucked in the 30s.
Oh, I would spend all day in the Lockheed Martin Pavilion.
Seeing if you can get a job.
Well, I mean, look, they have great benefits for queer employees, but no, I just want to look at airplanes, Ellie.
Well, that's how they get you. Let's kind of skip that period of history now that we've talked about it a bit. In 1952, Walt Disney, now a bored studio head who was soured from his recent union disputes, hired some of his best artists to design and build Disneyland. This is the group that would eventually be called Imagineers. Most of the artists were either animators or film set designers, which was exactly what Disney wanted. Rather than an amusement park with a midway and rides and not much else, Disneyland would be a new kind of experience. A park with a theme. And they could call it a themed park.
A themed park.
A park theme. Seriously, though, this relationship between film and theme parks is kind of crucial. Joe Rohde claims that film, in the beginning, didn't communicate plot so much as it served as place-making illusion, because they were short and sucked.
Ah yes, let us go to the movie theater and watch a gorilla beat a man up. This is the finest film of its generation.
So when you take out the illusion, stick the set designers on a plot of land and tell them to get to work, boom! You've got yourself a place. So you can tell how something like this would be, I guess, experientially significant, right? Galaxy's Edge story designer Margaret Carrison writes that
the goal of narrative placemaking is to create a sense of connection, meaning, and engagement between a place and its visitors/users by tapping into its identity and values. It recognizes that places have stories to tell and seeks to share those stories to foster a deeper understanding and appreciation of the environment.
I guess even when that environment is Star Wars.
Fostering a deeper appreciation of the Glepshido land.
You make Star Wars, but it's there, but you can touch it for several $100s. Paying several $100s for them to let me touch the Star Wars. So, Galaxy's Edge creatives put together a design Bible, relying on references directly from Lucasfilm, including artwork by original Star Wars concept artist Ralph McQuarrie. They had a wall of McQuarrie's work to use as the ultimate yardstick by which all new concepts would be judged. If it didn't fit the vibe of the McQuarrie wall, it's fucking out. Just like in film, a good deal of the props and set dressing for Galaxy's Edge are made from found items, stripped down airplane seats, army surplus equipment. Imagineers teamed up with Lucasfilm's head of design, Doug Chiang, as well as visited the working sets for films that were in production at the time. They also went to locations that inspired the filmmakers, and cities that might inspire Black Spire Outpost, such as Istanbul, Jerusalem, or Marrakesh. Quoting Imagineer Chris Beatty,
I remember standing in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. It's incredible to actually close your eyes, stand in the middle of the bazaar, and you hear the shopkeepers yelling at each other. You hear the call to prayer. You hear all these different people speaking different languages pass by. And you can smell the Turkish coffee, and you can smell the wet stone because it's been raining that morning, and the stone just has a smell to it. The ground you're walking on, those cobbles have been walked on for 1,000 years. If you close your eyes, you could be in a Star Wars film, right? You could be on the planet Batuu. You could be on Black Spire Outpost. It gave us so much more than just the visual look of this planet.
No, this is like, well, what is ultimately placemaking, which is sort of a discipline of urban design where you try and make a place feel distinct. A lot of that is just the sort of things that this guy mentions, right? Like a place having a distinct smell, a distinct sound, a distinct architectural style, sort of fitting in with its character, right? Like this is something that you can do in cities all around the world where you might be able to tell where you are, right? You're in Paris, you hear people speaking French, you hear sort of bicycles rattling by, it smells like sewage because you're next to the Seine. The same in London or New York. It's going to sound like...
This is sewage included.
Well, I don't know about New York, about the sewage, but it's going to smell like garbage because you're on the street and they don't have garbage cans there. But you get the idea, right?
I love New York.
It's the idea of a place being itself and not sort of a pastiche, if you will, of cultural homogeneity. It's a place being itself instead of just like everywhere else.
So, why is Galaxy's Edge like that? Well, part of it is clearly because the designers wanted to take full advantage of the medium. They wanted to make the place itself. They wanted to make something that felt real, something as transportative and meaningful as a Star Wars theme park could possibly be. However, I spoke earlier about the tension between parks as art and parks as product. The creatives behind it have clearly intended the former. It sure sounds like Galaxy's Edge does something new, like it's looking toward the future, toward truth, allowing itself to be kind of original and not surrender to the pull of corporate insincerity. But does it? What if those attempts at true creation have no choice but to fail because of the very system they arise from? Isn't there more manufactured artifice in a doll designed to look cutesy and handmade by the artisan, when in truth it's a mass-produced product of, I don't know, probable sweatshop labor? Maybe there's no truth to Galaxy's Edge in the first place.
Our listeners will be shocked to discover that Daughters of Ferrix podcast is, you'll never guess what we're talking about, capitalism. Shocking.
Well, it gets weirder because this brings us to sociologist, philosopher, and the Frenchiest man to ever live, Jean Baudrillard.
Jean Baudrillard.
Baudrillard began publishing in the 1960s, his writing in lineage with Marxian political economy, but also combined with semiotics, the study of signs and symbols. What are you laughing about, Sophie?
I'm sorry, I'm sort of laughing at us a little bit because this is how our episodes always go. Whether I write them or you write them, towards like the closing act, it suddenly gets like really serious.
I think it's really hard to do this show in a silly way. I think we're lighthearted enough. The problem with attempting to, I don't know if an argument is what we're going for, but like to trying to make there be a point to the episode.
Is that it just happens and you end up talking about like, what was the last episode I did? Was it Star Wars and Rural?
Yeah, it was the Rural Identity one. That one fucking cooked. People loved that one.
You just end up talking about like, I don't know, rural politics in Wisconsin instead of Star Wars.
Yes, that's the point. That's why we do the show. The listeners know we do what it says on the tin, you know?
Well, I understand. I was just, it sometimes is funny to me.
We have idiosyncrasies. Baudrillard's whole thing was that objects hold semiotic value on top of the sorts of values described by Marx. Marxian use value is about the tangible properties of a commodity, to what practical purpose it can be put. Exchange value describes the worth of one commodity in terms of another, and is actualized into things like labor time and price. Probably. I'm not a Marxist economist. Baudrillard described the existence of sign value, that in addition to use and exchange, objects have value according to systems which bestow social status upon the owner. Remember, Baudrillard's writing his early stuff in the 60s, so these systems are advertising, fashion, mass media. According to him, in the increasingly consumerist 20th century, society came to be constructed around the consumption and display of commodities.
I mean, this is not a bad argument to make because...
Right? Yeah. Go off, King.
As market economies or capitalist economies have developed, right, the imperatives for the individual participating in the system have changed. In, like 1800s Britain, right, why are you going to work? Why are you making money? Well, it's so you can feed yourself and like buy some clothes and like have a sewing machine or whatever to make your life a little easier. But as you sort of massively decrease scarcity as the system does its job and creates a lot of wealth really quickly, suddenly like getting food is not that hard. To pay for food, I maybe work like 2 hours a week instead of 40. And so what becomes more important to the individual is what you own, what status it signifies, right? Like Ellie has a ton of Star Wars books and Star Wars Lego sets, and that matters to her.
I have some Star Wars Lego sets. I have like 3 Star Wars Lego sets.
Okay, well, it was an example.
How dare you?
Don't you have Rivendell anyway?
That's not Star Wars.
Well, I know, but it's like it serves the same function. It serves to use the market to display your values by what things you own.
Absolutely. Baudrillard is not speaking to a thing that is made up here. We put a lot of stock in our society around the like social significance of objects.
Well, why do you think that like all these loser men from the suburbs pay like $100,000 for like a crappy truck? It's because it's a signal, a sign of like both your manhood for some reason and that you are like comfortably middle class.
A thing that even, you know, the comfortable middle class were not doing 100 years ago.
No, comfortable middle class 100 years ago was like, you might have a radio.
Exactly. And now your truck might have a radio in it if it's old enough.
Your truck might have a touch screen.
Your truck might have a steering wheel.
Your truck probably has a steering wheel.
Yeah, I'm making a Cybertruck joke. It's not a wheel.
It might also have like a Wii controller.
Don't say that. I want that now. I want the fucking Mario Kart Wii wheel for my car. Anyway, we agree. Baudrillard kind of cooked. From here, he does not stop cooking, but he also kind of goes off the deep end. He's cooking a lot, and maybe too much, perhaps, because he's working further and further into his own theories. Baudrillard still wrote about capitalist alienation and, yeah, exploitation, but what it really became about was this idea of symbolic consumption, far more than anything to do with class or capital. Eventually, he broke with Marxism altogether, arguing that by placing production at the core of the socioeconomic order, Marxists themselves reified a capitalist configuration of society. Baudrillard didn't like Marxist theory because he thought it wasn't sufficiently anti-capitalist.
Silence, Marxist. Another far more annoying Marxist is talking.
You don't like Marxism because it's anti-capitalist. I don't like Marxism because it's not anti-capitalist enough. We are not the same.
Oh.
Baudrillard's writing is dense. Sometimes it feels like he gets so lost in the sauce of his own woolly theories that you're not sure if there is a point to any of it. Sure, fashion is a symbol, but he came to argue that in the postmodern era, labor itself ceased to be about production and came to be symbolic of social position, of way of life. Wages don't have anything to do with the work a person does, so they too became a symbol of position. And all of this talk of signs and symbols gets us to Baudrillard's most famous concept, the simulacrum. That is to say, a copy with no reference to the original. A fundamental part of culture is representation. A thing symbolizes something else. The length and cut of your hair, Sophie, symbolizes certain things about your gender, right?
Does it? Oh, that I'm like attempting to be a femme.
That you're a woman. It's not that complicated. To any trans people listening, especially if you're early days, get a different haircut. Find somewhere that is safe, get a different haircut. It will help your self-image radically.
Yeah, it does help a lot.
That is the single biggest thing you can do. I would say over like starting hormones if you're in the market for that. Get a different haircut. You know, that's hair. My clothing might signify things about my relationship to authorities like the church. For instance, I'm wearing jeans that have graffiti scribbled on them about abolishing the police and not liking fascists. But the social order gets more and more complicated. Culture forms layers, and representations begin to just represent other symbols. How do you have a copy without reference to the original? Well, you lose the original. You get so many layers deep that the original is no longer signified in the representation whatsoever. Baudrillard describes 4 orders of simulation. 1, a representation that is the reflection of a profound reality. 2, a representation masks and denatures a profound reality. 3, a representation that masks the absence of a profound reality. And 4, a representation that has no relation to any reality whatsoever. It is its own pure simulacrum. Let me give you an example. Pumpkin spice latte. The coming of the thing that we call the season autumn is a fact of reality. It's fall right now in the Northern Hemisphere. If that includes you, maybe you're celebrating with seasonal goods and themed decor. This is my favorite season. Actually, I like the weathers and the colors, and I don't know, I'm just kind of generally fond of leaves.
That's just because you're not a biker.
Uh-huh. I take the streetcar. I take the bus. I like the fall. It's pretty. Autumn is symbolized by the harvest, which makes sense. That's what's historically happened around now. So autumn becomes harvest season. That's our first order. The harvest comes to be symbolized by pumpkins. This also makes sense. Pumpkins are cool and they're useful, but the symbol now is just pumpkin, not the harvest itself. So harvest season becomes pumpkin season as our second order. Pumpkins are symbolized by pumpkin pie, a combination of pumpkin and pastry and spices like nutmeg and cinnamon. That's our third order. Pumpkin season becomes pumpkin pie season. Lastly, pumpkin pie becomes symbolized by pumpkin spice lattes, a drink of coffee and milk and those aforementioned spices. It becomes a distinct flavor with nothing but layers of abstraction relating to the original.
That, to be clear, tastes nothing like pumpkin.
Right, there's no pumpkin in the latte, no presence of the harvest or the effects of autumn itself, and yet, pumpkin spice season, a copy that has become its own thing, simulacrum. Also, fuck Starbucks, free Palestine. But the point is that these simulacra add up. When all that is real in a society becomes abstracted through representation, when originals are lost, what happens then? Funnily enough, Jean Baudrillard thought Disneyland was the prime example.
Disneyland is a perfect model of all of the entangled orders of simulacra. It is first of all a play of illusions and phantasms, the pirates, the frontier, the future world, etc. This imaginary world is supposed to ensure the success of the operation, but what attracts the crowds the most is without a doubt the social microcosm, the religious, miniaturized pleasure of real America, of its constraints and joys.
Disneyland, in this framing, seems to appeal to the American public precisely because it is a simulacrum, or at least because it functions as a means by which the idea of a perfect American town, itself a fiction, a symbol, is made to seem true by comparison.
Well, and there's obviously an interesting tension because what would you say is the type of person most likely to visit Disneyland?
White person?
Of what wealth class?
Middle class.
Middle class. And where do white middle class people live in this country?
In the suburbs.
In the suburbs. Right. So Disneyland this is something well trod in urbanist circles. Disneyland functions as kind of like a temporary stand-in for the type of living in this country that white middle-class Americans rejected and destroyed. Because the original suburbs were quite similar to what Disneyland offers on the Main Street drag, right? It's got like, you have shops, you have a little streetcar, then the houses are, sort of close to that, and everybody kind of walks around, everybody knows each other, everybody goes to the same church. But out of sort of fear of black people, and mostly fear of black people, middle-class white people rejected that because it might get them too close to a black person or another, sort of minority, and created the highly isolated, highly individualistic, highly segregated built reality that we all live in now. So this is like a chance to return to this idea that these white middle-class people still have of themselves, that they live in like a cute suburban town.
The imaginary of Disneyland is neither true nor false. It is a deterrence machine set up in order to rejuvenate the fiction of the real in the opposite camp. Whence the debility of this imaginary, its infantile degeneration. This world wants to be childish in order to make us believe that the adults are elsewhere, in the real world, and to conceal the fact that true childishness is everywhere, that it is that of the adults themselves who come here to act the child in order to foster illusions as to their real childishness.
Let's take a moment and apply the orders of simulacra to something a little more familiar.
Friend of the pod, the Vietnam War.
The thing we call the Vietnam War is represented by the media and news that depicts it, right? The media and news is digested by other creatives and becomes another representation. The film Star Wars. Star Wars is abstracted by a series of further representations through various mediums, including further films. And the feelings created by those further films are abstracted into a theme park. A park that largely lacks representation of the film Star Wars or its sources, and instead symbolizes Star Wars as a concept. Why is Galaxy's Edge like that? Because it's a symbol, maybe even a simulacrum. Maybe this is the unintentional technique by which the creatives that designed Galaxy's Edge went about attempting to, again, build a place where we could discover our own story. Maybe that simulacrum serves as a way to reify the concept of Star Wars as an entity, as a brand, rather than what it truly is, which is, I don't know, a disparate series of messily connected pulp sci-fi stories that often bear minimal resemblance to the original. Galaxy's Edge itself is kind of a tie-in to a film that doesn't actually exist. So the First Order shuttle that is parked in the fucking land is a design from the version of Episode 9 written by a director that Lucasfilm was unhappy with before they replaced him with J.J. Abrams. Galaxy's Edge was designed for a different movie. And hell, maybe for something with near infinite representations and tremendous sign value, the only way to make a viable theme park product is to make it a representation of a representation of a representation. Maybe that's why Star Wars is popular in the first place. It's not a Vietnam War film, but represents it. It's not about World War II, but it symbolizes it. It's not Flash Gordon or The Hidden Fortress, but it's a copy.
Right, like, why do you think that Star Wars grossed $1 trillion and First Blood grossed basically nothing? It's too real. First Blood is too real.
Thus, everywhere in Disneyland, the objective profile of America is drawn. Disneyland exists in order to hide that it is the real country, all of real America that is Disneyland. Disneyland is presented as imaginary in order to make us believe that the rest is real, whereas all of Los Angeles and the America that surrounds it are no longer real, but belong to the order of simulation.
The order of simulation. When postmodern society is composed only of simulacra, symbols of symbols of symbols of symbols, with no reference to the original reality, as Baudrillard believed ours is, we live in a simulation. Not a society that isn't real, but one that is hyper-real, a place where there is no clear difference between symbols and reality. Hyper-reality. Why go to Galaxy's Edge for that feeling of place the Imagineers described? Why not just go to Istanbul instead? In Baudrillardian hyperreality, entertainment and communication technology provides experiences more intense, more stimulating than everyday life. Consciousness is tricked into preferring the artificial and its endless simulated copies. We learn to escape the desert of the real for the ecstasy of hyperreality.
This is good, actually. I never read him before, but this is like an observable phenomenon, right? Because if you talk to sort of like Joe average American, right? Like if you talk to that, white person, middle class from the suburbs, and you ask them like, oh, I heard you're going on vacation. Where are you going? They're going to invariably say, I'm going on a cruise. I'm going to Disneyland. I'm going to Universal Studios. I'm going to X resort in the Bahamas. They're rarely going to say, I'm going to, I don't know, Kalamazoo. Like,
I'm sure if Baudrillard was sitting here with us today, he would also argue that Kalamazoo is hyperreality.
It probably is. But the idea being, right, that we have become as a society obsessed with escaping from reality, whether we say that we are or not. My family will sort of scoff at the idea of virtual reality or video games or things like that as like, oh, they're just trying to get away from the real world. That's dumb. But then we'll only be interested in going to vacation at a place like Disney. We are collectively obsessed with avoiding living in our own lives, in the places we live, obsessed with getting away from it all. It's why like every other ad on my TV is like, oh, get away from it all. Go to Verbo. Like, what?
And all of this hyper-real living supposedly leads to breakdown. Breakdown of language because meaning is lost. Breakdown of authenticity because you can't tell what's real anymore. Breakdown of identity because the systems you use to construct your sense of self lack any reference to reality, which leaves us passive, alienated, and vulnerable to the manipulation of those systems. Where does that leave us? Where does that leave me, a person who's built my life around this shit? I buy the books, I watch the films and the television, I went to Galaxy's Edge, and I really liked it. I'm not a theme park person, but the rides were cool. I don't know, the food was distinct and pretty tasty. The environment was extremely Star Warsy. I got a fucking sabacc deck. The Walt Disney Company is a machine that devours, grinds, and spits out symbols for its own profit and market supremacy. What happens when our systems of meaning-making are constructed on a foundation of simulacra made by the powerful? What happens when art is owned and sold like cattle? Do our fundamental cultural stories hold any meaning whatsoever when the reason they exist is to turn a profit for the rich? For corporations that themselves function to dominate our attentions, our lives, and our wills? Can we escape? Should I renounce Star Wars and burn my books, my toys, and my fucking videotapes? The dichotomy between artistic pursuit and soulless corporate product isn't just present in theme parks, of course. Next time on Daughters of Ferrex, the question in which the very soul of Star Wars is held, and the dilemma that we face as consumers if we want to keep enjoying the product.
This is interesting. I might have to make an episode about this someday, but I really want to write a book called, like, if I was going to give it like a leftist title, I would be like Consumer Christianity, the commodification of faith and its something, 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 right?
Yeah, that sounds real marketable.
It does, actually. When you filter all of your religion, all of your sort of faith, what you believe so deeply through corporate mechanisms, what is actually like going on there? You know, if you go to like insert mega church, the music you hear is produced by corporations to make a profit. The way that the building is designed and was built and how it was financed is like consultants. Like, you'll have consultants to tell you how to run your church, getting paid to tell you how to run your church so that you can like get as big as possible. It's just a very concerning thing that in every aspect of our lives, including like, you know, the sacred, we have let everything be filtered through what makes money. If we think about sort of the great classics of our literature, they were not, or our history even, they were not like made the same way art is now. We all love Shakespeare, right? Everyone knows Shakespeare, but Shakespeare was not, you know, sort of specifically tailored for consumption by global audiences to make, you know, trillions and trillions of dollars. Shakespeare was written, generally speaking, to be performed in a single theater in a single place. Does that make it necessarily like, you know, morally superior or aesthetically superior? No, but I think that does make it in a lot of ways different than what we would call art now, because so much of our art, like theater for God's sake, is corporate. It's designed to make as much money as possible.
Well, it's trying to have mass market appeal because the market is mass.
Everything has to have mass market appeal. Everything has to be sellable to the largest number of people possible. Everything.
Including Daughters of Ferrex. That's why we're on video now.
Yeah. No, we're not immune to this. I'm not immune to this. Oh God, I could probably think of a trillion things that I am complicit in this in. But like, I think we ought to really examine how much the meaning of our society is made by corporate interest. Yeah, I don't know. It's concerning to me. I think about it a lot.
At the risk of spoiling the next episode, I think one of the trickiest parts about it is that there is no proper separatism from this, right? It is the water in which we swim.
Because counterculture itself has become a corporate commodity. Hot topic. I read the other day this really interesting article about how Subaru turned its entire fortunes around by advertising to lesbians. Something that is integral to a lot of people's, like, well, not integral, but part of a lot of people's identity as like gay women is like, oh, I drive a Subaru. You know, I'm lesbian. I drive a Subaru.
Certainly part of that identity building includes brand name.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the listeners not to look at my background right now.
Wait, I want to see. Send pictures.
You know what I own.
I do.
I know it's not, you know, some people have bigger collections or whatever, but it's more than you have.
Look, I have if the viewers want to look behind me, I wonder if there are any items on my bed that I have purchased to sort of signal a cultural identification.
I mean, you've got a big trans flag in your room, don't you?
No, I don't anymore because I lost it.
Oh, well, sorry, you're not trans anymore. Guess you're cis now.
No, I was talking about on my bed. I have like one of those stupid IKEA shark plushies that every like.
You have the IKEA shark?
I do.
Fucking hell, man.
I do have the IKEA shark.
Well, you know, we're all stereotypes. You want to do some emails?
Let's do some emails, and then we can talk more about this next episode on the Daughters of Ferrex podcast.
On the Daughters of Ferrex podcast adjacent show.
KJOV 93.2 FM.
DOF 69 FM.
69.69 FM, your home for Star Wars.
All right, let's read an email from Hunter M. Hi, daughters. After the Acolyte episode 3 and your suggestion to listen to the episode on religious extremism in Star Wars, I finally listened to your podcast and was hooked almost immediately. Thanks, Hunter. What could be better than combining my autistic habit of dense media analysis with my favorite special interest hosted by fellow queer leftists? I've binged the whole show over the last several weeks and enjoyed every episode. With that preamble out of the way, I do have a subject I'd like to hear your thoughts on: the support structure of the Rebel Alliance. The original trilogy focuses almost entirely on big-time hero characters, but thanks to expanded materials like Rogue One, Andor, and Rebels, we get glimpses into the work that must have taken place to support these big-time heroes. Who provided the stolen plans for the Death Star? Who paid for the X-Wings and blasters? How did Rebels acquire pilots and fuel for their ships? Organized rebellion takes a lot of support infrastructure, and as someone with a significant anxiety disorder, I very much enjoy thinking about the many rebels we don't see on the front lines. I couldn't be Luke or Leia or Han or even just one of the fighters defending Hoth or attacking Endor. I don't have the right temperament for that kind of danger and would just get in the way. But I could fuel X-Wings before the Battle of Yavin, or work on a Rebel hospital ship to give Luke a prosthetic hand, or just be part of the ground crew that helps keep this cause I care about alive. Sorry, this isn't the most specific question. I just want to hear your thoughts on the background infrastructure needed to keep a rebellion running. I wonder what the ratio of fighters to support staff is, although I'm sure a lot of people took whatever role was needed. Desperate times and whatnot. Thank you for putting on this incredible show, and may the Force be with you, Hunter M.
And also with you. The thing about, you've, I'm sure, heard the kind of old axiom, an army marches on its stomach. In most modern militaries, or a lot of modern militaries, support personnel can outnumber combat personnel by up to 10 to 1. When we think about war, the experience of being in a war or at war, it's very much like, the guy in the jungle clutching a rifle hoping not to get shot by the Viet Cong, or the guy on the Eastern Front, freezing his toes off as he waits for the Germans to advance. That's what we think about. But for most people who are in the military during wartime, their experience is going to look a lot more like driving a truck. Frontline combat burns through supplies and equipment really, really, really quickly. And so the infrastructure to replace that is honestly more important than any of the individual guys up front. Because, you can throw anyone into a uniform and have them shoot at the other guy with a reasonable degree of effectiveness. That's the wonder of firearms, is that it's made it really easy to make soldiers. But you can't easily replace the infrastructure that is required to sustain that person and keep him, shooting bullets, firing artillery shells, etc. So these guys are more important than Luke Skywalker, bigger heroes than Luke Skywalker. And given the size of the on-screen Rebel Alliance, there were probably millions of guys, giving money, stealing supplies, whatever for them.
Well, I want to caveat, Hunter. You say here, organized rebellion takes a lot of support infrastructure. I think it's important to remember that everything takes a lot of support infrastructure.
The Daughters of Ferrex podcast takes a lot of support infrastructure. Al Gore's internet.
Yeah, I mean, it takes Al Gore's internet, every person who keeps the internet running. It's every little person that funds this show. It's me doing the work, not just to actually make the show, but to eat food. And this is a show where two people come on and talk about Star Wars.
It's not that important.
Infrastructural needs get orders of magnitudes larger when you have more guys, right?
Think about my apartment, how much infrastructure that takes to support. First of all, the water guy, the power guy, whoever maintains the roads, the sidewalks, whoever drives the bus, also, all the supply chains that created everything that made the apartment. And it just keeps going. Like everything is so infinitely complex. It's wild.
It is a little bit humbling, perhaps. One is dwarfed by the scale of the thing. It's also a little bit horrific. I feel like I will never fully understand the mechanisms that make my life possible. But yeah, I think that is a question that people are increasingly interested in when it comes to storytelling. But frankly, descriptions of infrastructural things can be interesting, but they are rarely dramatic. And they rarely lend themselves to good dramatic storytelling and that kind of means that...
because who cares about, the organization of the guys who maintain the X-Wings? We all know somebody who works at Jiffy Lube.
Well, and Hunter cares, and I also care. I think that stuff is fun, but I don't know. The most infrastructurally minded Star Wars is Andor, and is Andor about the distribution of funds to the... No, Andor is about the moral quandary of Mon Mothma needing to distribute money to whatever, but not sell out her daughter to fucking Davos Gold. That's the drama, right? It's the human questions and all that shit. And let's be clear, for all the guys filling up X-Wings, they've got problems in their lives, You've got whatever fuck-ass lady fueling a Y-Wing who is having it out with her spouse. But I don't know. Even if it's interesting, it's not sexy.
And Star Wars is all about sex, baby.
Star Wars is all about something.
It's all about Vietnam, as we've discussed.
It's really not. Thank you for your email, Hunter. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, suggestions, or corrections, you can send them to our show email, daughtersferrix@gmail.com.
If you want to listen to new episodes as they release every 3 Wednesdays, you can find us on most places you can listen to podcasts. You can find sources for this episode on our website, daughtersofferrix.com, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at FerrixPod, FERRIXPOD.
Thank you to our comrades Joel Miranda, Emerson Arrayas, and Faith Fool for making this episode possible. If you want to support the show, visit patreon.com/daughtersofferrix. I have been Eleanor Mueller. You can find me at The Letter Bomber on most platforms. Sophie, what about you?
You can find me at the @redline_pod, where we talk about trains, at Episcopiled, where we talk about religion, and at Sophia in SLC.
This episode was written and edited by me, Eleanor Mueller, and co-written by Meg Brennan. Our background music is by Louis Zong. Our intro was arranged by me, with theme by Nicholas Bertel. Thanks for listening. I think we should have a World's Fair where there's one giant tower, and on top of that tower is art, and on the other tower is
fascism.
Sure, fascists make art. They just make shit art.
Inside of you, there are 2 wolves. Both are fascist.
Speak for yourself. Jesus Christ.